Welcome to Whitley Strieber's podcast studio. I'm visiting him today doing a retrospective series on books that he's written, and his most famous book is Communion. It's a very, very pivotal book in the UFO world. Whitley, can you explain the journey that you've been through with Communion, with public perception of how it was when you wrote this versus nowadays?
Well, yeah, I sure can. Public perception, when I wrote Communion, fell into two categories. Category one, what a nut. Category two, my God, it's real. This happened to me. Those are the two categories. Category one was really big. Category two was bigger than I thought and very important, and turned out to be what survived over time.
And can you tell me the response that you had from the second category after you wrote? How did you interact with these people, and explain a little bit about what's happened with those communication?
What happened after the book was published was astonishing. We began to get letters. We got first 50 letters, 100 letters. You know, authors get letters, but they don't get that many. And I was thinking, gosh, we're getting a lot of letters. Then one day the postman arrived with a big box and dumped maybe 300 letters on the floor. And I said to Anne, I can't open all of these, and we can't throw them out because they've got private stuff in them and people's addresses and names. And she said, well, I can open them. I can read them all. And that began a 10-year period where Anne opened and read every single letter. And nearly 4,000 of those letters are now in an archive at Rice University. And what this book did was it started the process of us realizing as a people, as human beings, that we are in contact. And the letters archive is the record of first contact between ordinary people and these mysterious visitors.
It's just amazing because we're at such a precipice in our human history, and even thinking about human initiated contact and the idea that we do have the power to communicate with other beings, other dimensions, whatever words you want to call them. Tell me a little bit about the ongoing communication that you have.
What has happened to me over the years, especially after Annie passed away, because this, remember, has something to do with our dead as well. It's not, even if they are aliens, our visitors, they know the world of the dead very well. So after Annie passed away, everything kind of ramped up. I had this implant put in my ear in 1989, and it didn't really do anything until after she passed away. Now, my relationship with this presence, the visitors, our dead, Annie, I can't really categorize it, is so intimate and so much a part of my life. I could not write a word without it. Every night at 3 a.m., or approximately 3 a.m., as directed by them over a period of years where they would wake me up night after night in all kinds of different ways, I get up, I go and I sit and I open my mind by placing my attention on my body, and there is an interaction. And the next day's writing of the book is ready. And that happens night after night, 7 days a week. Whatever they are, vacations have not occurred to them as a possibility. So this is the way my life is now. This is my life. And they come in here every once in a while. And when they do, they put an injection in a little place here on my leg, which is and prevents me from having allergic reactions to their physical presence. Mm-hmm. But their physical presence is rare. It doesn't happen often. Mm-hmm. The implant, which has been studied pretty extensively, I was at a big research institute in Texas years ago, back in the 90s, with the head of materials science there, Southwest Research, and suddenly the implant turned on, and when it turns on, my ear becomes bright red. And I said, Bill, the implant is on, and the facility has a very sophisticated signals acquisition lab in it. We ran over to the lab. They did collect a signal, but then I was told the lab's classified, so we can't tell you anything about the signal. So I was frustrated. 20 years later, two men came up to me while I was doing a book signing in San Antonio and said, we just want you to know that the signal we collected from your implant was one of the strangest signals we have ever collected, and it is still to this day under study. Wow. So this is my life with the visitors. It's a wonderful and extraordinary life, and I'm glad I have it now, but it was a hard start. Boy, make no mistake about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've really persevered through so much, and you know, as humans, I'm very grateful for the work that you do, because
thank you.
I think this is really important for people to understand and to move forward with our humanity.
Well, there are a lot of us in the experiencer community who are trying to communicate to others that this is real and this communication is possible. Mm-hmm. It is immensely challenging, very complicated, very subtle, and very new in some profound ways, but doable. Mm-hmm. It's doable.
Yes, definitely. The last thing I want to ask you about is the image on the front, because this image has become iconic in many ways.
Yes.
Can you tell me about the process?
When I had my experience in 1985, in December of 1985, the thing I remembered most were these big black eyes staring at me, big black slanted eyes staring at me. And I was kind of mesmerized by them. And they stuck in my mind vividly. So when I eventually ended up with a UFO investigator, Bud Hopkins, I went through a long period of, I wasn't prepared for this in any way. I didn't know this could even happen to anyone. And I certainly didn't think of it as being, I thought of it as being something in my own mind or a brain tumor or something like that. Or finally, I began to think it was a crime, which in a sense it was. But I never really thought this face was anything real until toward the end. And it became clear that it was real, that this had been somebody who looked like this. And when it was time to write the book, I said to Bud Hopkins, we need to find a police artist. And we found Ted Seth Jacobs, who had done some work for police portraiture. And I sat side by side with Ted and described the face as I remembered it, and he sketched. And then he did the painting. And that painting, those eyes, caused millions of people to realize that what they thought had been a dream had been in some way a memory.
Yeah, it triggers memories for sure, and I think that that's part of the communion with people who have experiences, is that our stories inspire each other and trigger more memories and more memories, and
that's right.
It's part of the process.
That's part of the process, and we have to be very careful to be sure we're triggering memory and not imagination.
Yes.
Because it's hard to do this. This is going to be the great challenge of this whole thing, mm-hmm. is to make sure that we are staying with memory and not imagination.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Whitley. It's really a pleasure to talk to you about such an iconic book and to hear your personal perspective on it. We're just truly grateful.
Thank you.